Standing on a riverbank worth $20 million, Ethan Carter watched the woman who destroyed him step out of a black Mercedes in designer heels she could barely walk in. Vanessa Whitmore, billionaire. The girl who vanished without a word 7 years ago now wanted his land for a luxury resort that would erase everything his grandfather built. Rain soaked through her expensive coat as she climbed his porch steps, and when she finally spoke, her voice cracked on a single question. Does the promise we made here still mean anything to you? If you want to see how far a broken promise can travel before it finds its way home, stay with me until the end. Hit that like button and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story reaches. The spring rain came down hard the night Vanessa Whitmore returned to Silverwood River, the kind of cold March downpour that turned dirt roads to mud and made the river sound like it was tearing itself apart. Ethan Carter stood at his kitchen window watching headlights cut through the darkness, knowing exactly who it was before the car even stopped. Black Mercedes, tinted windows, the kind of vehicle that didn't belong on a gravel driveway held together by hope and stubbornness. He'd known she was coming. The lawyers had called 3 times that week. "Dad?" Lily's voice came from the hallway behind him. "Is that her?" Ethan didn't turn around. His daughter was 12 years old and too smart for her own good, the kind of kid who noticed everything adults tried to hide. She'd been listening to his phone calls, reading the letters that came in heavy cream envelopes with law firm names embossed in gold. "Go to bed, Lily. It's 7:30. "Then go read in bed." She didn't move. Ethan could feel her standing there in her oversized sweatshirt and fuzzy socks, watching him the way she always did when she thought he was about to do something stupid. The car door opened. A woman stepped out into the rain, and even from 50 yards away, even after 7 years, Ethan recognized the way she moved. Careful. Deliberate. Like she was performing every gesture for an invisible audience. Vanessa Whitmore had left Silverwood River as a 23-year-old graduate student with paint-stained jeans and wild ambitions. She came back as something else entirely. "Dad?" "Lily, please," his daughter sighed, the long-suffering sound of a child who knew when to retreat. Her footsteps padded back down the hallway. A door clicked shut. Ethan exhaled slowly and watched Vanessa walk toward his house through the rain. She wore a charcoal coat that probably cost more than his truck, dark slacks, heels that sank into the gravel with each step. Her hair was shorter now, professional. She'd straightened it. He remembered it curly. Ethan opened the front door before she could knock. The porch light threw long shadows across her face, and for just a second, one heartbeat, she looked exactly like the girl who used to sit on this same porch with her feet tucked under her, sketching buildings that didn't exist yet while he played guitar badly and made her laugh. Then the moment passed. "Ethan." Her voice was different too, smoother, practiced. "Thank you for seeing me. Didn't have much choice. Your lawyers made it pretty clear this was happening, whether I wanted it or not." Something flickered in her expression. Hurt, maybe, or anger. Hard to tell with the rain and the shadows and 7 years of silence between them. "Can I come in?" Ethan stepped aside. She walked past him into the house his grandfather built in 1952, the house where Ethan had lived his entire life, except for 2 years at State College and 6 months of trying to make it work in the city before he realized he'd rather be broke in Silverwood than miserable anywhere else. Vanessa's heels clicked on the hardwood floor. She stopped in the center of the living room, looking around like she was cataloging everything. The worn couch, the fireplace that hadn't worked in a decade, the photographs covering one entire wall, Lily at various ages, Ethan's father before the stroke, the grandfather who'd taught Ethan how to fish and fix engines and stay in one place when the rest of the world wanted you to run. "It hasn't changed," Vanessa said quietly. "Why would it?" She turned to face him. Up close, the years showed, fine lines around her eyes, a tightness in her jaw that hadn't been there before. She looked expensive and exhausted and nothing like the girl who used to fall asleep on his shoulder during late-night drives to nowhere. "I know you don't want to talk to me," she started. "Then why are you here?" "Because I owe you a conversation before this becomes something neither of us can control." Ethan crossed his arms. "You owe me a lot more than a conversation, Vanessa." "I know." "Do you?" Because from where I'm standing, you disappeared 7 years ago without a word, without a phone call, without a single goddamn explanation, and now you show up in a car worth more than my house wanting to have a chat about real estate. So forgive me if I'm not feeling particularly charitable." Her eyes closed briefly. When they opened again, there was something raw in them, something that looked almost like the girl he remembered. "I didn't come here to fight." "Then why did you come?" "The Silverwood River Resort project. You've seen the proposals." "I've seen the threats disguised as proposals, yeah." "Ethan, 20 acres, the river access, my grandfather's house, everything my family built for 3 generations, and your company wants to turn it into a parking lot for rich people who'll visit twice a year and complain about the bugs." Vanessa's voice stayed level. "It's not a parking lot. It's a $200 million eco-luxury development that will bring jobs and infrastructure to a town that desperately needs both. The resort will employ 300 people locally. The economic impact studies— I don't care about your economic impact studies." "You should. Silverwood River is dying, Ethan. Main Street is half empty. The school district is losing funding. Young people leave and never come back because there's nothing here for them." "Lily's here," Ethan said quietly. "I'm here. That's enough." Something shifted in Vanessa's expression. "Lily, your daughter. Adopted daughter, 3 years ago. The lawyers mentioned it in their research. I didn't know you—" She stopped, started again. "I didn't know you wanted kids." "I didn't. Then her mother died and Child Protective Services called because apparently I was the only person she talked about in foster care. Said I taught her how to read blueprints when she used to hang around the construction sites where I worked. I barely remembered her. But she remembered me." Vanessa looked away. "That sounds like you." "What does?" "Taking in a kid nobody else wanted." The words hung between them, sharp and unintended. Ethan felt anger rise in his chest, hot and familiar. "Is that what you think this is? Some kind of savior complex?" "No. I think it's the same thing you've always done. You see something broken and you try to fix it." Funny coming from someone who ran the second things got complicated. Vanessa's composure cracked. "You have no idea what happened. Then tell me." "I can't. Can't or won't. Both." Ethan laughed, but there was no humor in it. 7 years, Vanessa. 7 years of nothing. No letter, no email, no drunk phone call at 3 in the morning. Just gone. And now you show up with lawyers and proposals, and you can't even tell me why you left. I know how it looks. It looks like you decided I wasn't worth the trouble. That's not true. Then what is true? She opened her mouth, closed it, her hands twisted together, and Ethan noticed she wore no rings. No jewelry at all except for a watch that probably cost more than his truck. "I made mistakes," she said finally. "I was 23 and scared, and I made choices I've regretted every day since. But I can't change what happened. All I can do is try to make things right now. By buying my land. By offering you fair market value for property you can't afford to keep." The words hit like a slap. Ethan's jaw tightened. "Get out." "Ethan, I said get out." Vanessa didn't move. Rain drummed against the windows. Somewhere in the house, a pipe knocked against the wall, the ancient plumbing protesting like it always did. "I looked at your tax records," she said quietly. "You're 3 years behind. The property taxes alone are more than you make in a year working construction. You took out a second mortgage to pay for Lily's medical bills when she had pneumonia. You're drowning, Ethan. This house is drowning, and I'm offering you a way to save it. By giving it to you. By selling it to people who can preserve it. The development plan includes historical preservation for structures with cultural significance. Your grandfather's house could become part of the resort's heritage narrative. It wouldn't be demolished. It would be turned into a museum, a prop, something for tourists to take pictures of. It would survive. That's not the same thing as living." Vanessa looked at him for a long moment. The rain kept falling. The old house creaked and settled around them. "No," she said softly. "I suppose it's not." She turned toward the door. Ethan should have let her leave, should have kept his mouth shut and let her walk back into the rain and out of his life for another 7 years. But something in him wouldn't let it end like this. "The promise," he heard himself say. Vanessa stopped. Her back was to him. What? You asked if the promise we made still means anything. That's why you came here, isn't it? Not just for the land. You wanted to know if I still... He couldn't finish the sentence. She turned slowly. Her eyes were bright, and Ethan couldn't tell if it was tears or just the reflection of the overhead light. Does it, she asked, mean anything? Ethan thought about the night they'd made that promise. Summer. The river running low and lazy. Vanessa's head on his shoulder, both of them lying on the dock his grandfather built. Looking up at stars you could actually see before the light pollution from the highway expansion. She'd just finished her thesis. He'd just gotten the construction job that was supposed to be temporary, but turned into 5 years. She was leaving for Boston in 2 weeks. He was staying in Silverwood forever. Promise me something, she'd said. Anything. Promise me this place will always be here, no matter what happens, no matter where we go or what we become. Promise me we can always come back to this spot, and it'll be exactly the same. I promise. Say it right. I promise this place will always be here, for you, for me, for anyone who needs it. She'd kissed him then. He could still taste the river water on her lips. 2 weeks later, she was gone. I don't know, Ethan said now, standing in his grandfather's living room with 7 years of silence between them and a $20 million development contract waiting in her briefcase. I don't know if it means anything anymore. Vanessa nodded slowly, like she'd expected that answer. Okay. She walked to the door, put her hand on the knob, stopped. I'm staying at the Riverbend Inn for the next 2 weeks. If you change your mind about the offer, about any of this, you know where to find me. I won't change my mind. I know. She opened the door, rain swept across the threshold. She stepped out into it, and Ethan watched her walk back to her Mercedes, back to whatever life she'd built that was so important she couldn't spare him a single honest explanation. The car's taillights disappeared down the gravel drive. Ethan stood in the open doorway for a long time, letting the cold air wash over him. Behind him, soft footsteps approached. She's pretty, Lily said. You were supposed to be in bed. I was in bed. Now I'm here. His daughter slipped under his arm, fitting herself against his side the way she always did when she thought he needed it. Is she going to take the house? She's going to try. Are you going to let her? Ethan looked down at Lily. She had dark eyes that saw too much and a stubborn chin that reminded him uncomfortably of himself. 3 years ago, she'd been a 9-year-old kid in the foster system who barely spoke. Now she was 12 and designing impossible buildings and notebooks she filled faster than he could buy them. No, he said. I'm not going to let her. Good. Lily leaned her head against his ribs. I like it here. Me too, kid. They stood there together while the rain fell and the river rose, and somewhere in a hotel room across town, Vanessa Whitmore probably sat in a chair that didn't creak and looked out a window that didn't leak and tried to convince herself she was doing the right thing. Ethan closed the door. He had no idea that Vanessa would be back the next morning. Well, the knocking started at 8:15, which was exactly when Lily left for school, and Ethan was still half asleep with coffee burning his tongue. He opened the door expecting a delivery driver, or maybe one of the neighbors asking to borrow tools they'd never return. Vanessa stood on his porch holding 2 cups of coffee from the place in town that charged $5 for espresso drinks Ethan couldn't pronounce. What are you doing here? Bringing coffee, as an apology for ambushing you last night? She held out one of the cups. Black, 2 sugars. Unless you've changed. He hadn't. That was the problem. Ethan took the coffee because refusing it felt petty, and he needed the caffeine more than he needed to make a point. This doesn't change anything, he said. I know. I'm still not selling. I know that too. Then why are you here? Vanessa looked past him into the house. Is Lily home? School. Can I come in anyway? Every rational part of Ethan's brain screamed no. He stepped aside anyway. Vanessa walked into the kitchen like she'd done it 1,000 times before, which she had, back when this kitchen was the center of their entire world. She set her coffee on the table his grandfather made and pulled out a chair that wobbled because one leg was shorter than the others. You never fixed this, she said, sitting down. Been busy. With what? Living, raising a kid, trying to keep a 90-year-old house from falling apart while working 60-hour weeks. The usual. Vanessa wrapped both hands around her coffee cup. She'd taken off the expensive coat. Underneath, she wore a simple black sweater that probably still cost more than Ethan's entire wardrobe, but at least looked like something a human being might actually wear. "I'm not here about the resort," she said. "Then why are you here?" "I don't know." The honesty caught him off guard. Ethan sat down across from her, in the chair that used to be his grandfather's, and tried to figure out what game she was playing. "You flew here from Boston to drink coffee in my kitchen?" "I drove." "You drove 6 hours to drink coffee in my kitchen?" "Yes." "Vanessa, so I couldn't stop thinking about what you said, about the promise." She looked up at him, and there was something fragile in her expression. "I spent 7 years trying to forget this place, this town, you, and I thought I'd done it. I built a whole life that had nothing to do with Silverwood River. And then Victor proposed the resort project and showed me the land surveys, and there it was. Your grandfather's house, the dock, the river, everything I'd been running from." "Victor?" "Victor Langford, my business partner. He's the one who identified this location as optimal for the development." Something cold moved through Ethan's chest. "Your business partner knew about us?" "I might have mentioned it. Years ago, when we first started working together. And he just happened to pick this specific location. It's the best site for the project, the environmental studies, the access points, the—" "Vanessa, come on, you're smarter than this." She went very still. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying it's a hell of a coincidence that your business partner decided to build a resort on the exact piece of land where you and I used to—" He stopped, started again. "Where we used to be happy." "Victor wouldn't he? You're telling me this guy knows about your history here, and he accidentally picks this location out of thousands of possible sites? You're being paranoid. Am I?" Vanessa stood up. The chair scraped against the floor. "I should go." "Yeah, you should." But she didn't move. She stood there with her coffee getting cold, looking around the kitchen like she was trying to memorize it. Her gaze landed on the wall where Lily's drawings were taped up. Buildings that defied physics, houses with impossible angles, sketches of a world that existed only in a 12-year-old's imagination. "She's talented," Vanessa said quietly. "She's brilliant, wants to be an architect." "Does she know about us?" "There's no us to know about." "You know what I mean?" Ethan sighed. "She knows I used to date someone who left. That's all she needs to know. And she's okay with me being here? She thinks you're pretty and dangerous." Direct quote. Something that might have been a smile flickered across Vanessa's face. "Smart kid. Too smart. Scares me sometimes." "Good. Scared parents pay attention." They fell into silence. Outside, a truck rumbled past on the main road. The refrigerator hummed. The house settled and creaked the way old houses do, like it was breathing. "I should tell you something," Vanessa said, "before this goes any further." "I'm listening." "When I left 7 years ago," she stopped, took a breath. "It wasn't because I wanted to." Ethan's hands tightened around his coffee cup. "Then why?" "I told you I can't explain." "Can't or won't?" "Both, neither, I don't—" Frustration crept into her voice. "There are things you don't know. Things I can't talk about without destroying everything I've built." "Try me." "Ethan, 7 years, Vanessa. You owe me more than vague excuses and corporate double talk." She met his eyes. Hers were green, he remembered. Green with flecks of gold that caught the light when she was about to cry or scream or do something reckless. Right now they looked stormy. "I didn't abandon you," she said. "I was removed." "What does that mean?" "It means I woke up one morning ready to tell you I was staying in Silverwood, that I was turning down the Boston Fellowship, that I didn't care about my career if it meant losing you. And by that afternoon, I was on a plane to Boston with a new phone number and instructions never to contact you again." Ethan stared at her. "Instructions from who?" "I can't tell you that." "Like hell you can't." "Ethan, please, who told you to leave?" Vanessa looked away. Her jaw worked like she was chewing words she couldn't spit out. "Someone who had leverage," she said finally. "Someone who could have destroyed your life if I didn't cooperate. And I was 23 and terrified, and I believed them when they said it was the only way to keep you safe. Safe from what? From the life I was about to step into, from the consequences of being with someone like me. Someone like you, Ethan repeated slowly. A billionaire CEO? Or a coward? The words landed like a punch. Vanessa flinched. For a second, Ethan regretted it. Then he remembered 7 years of silence, and the regret evaporated. That's fair, Vanessa said quietly. I deserve that. You deserve a lot worse. I know. She picked up her coffee cup, set it in the sink, turned to face him one more time. I meant what I said last night, about wanting to make things right. I know I can't fix what I did, but I can try to give you options. The resort offer stands. $3 million for 20 acres in the house. You could take that money, buy land somewhere else, give Lily the kind of life she deserves. She deserves this life. Here, in this house. Even if you can't afford to keep it, I'll figure it out. How? Ethan didn't have an answer for that. They both knew it. Vanessa walked to the door. This time, Ethan didn't try to stop her. She paused with her hand on the knob, looking back at him one last time. The promise we made, she said. I know it doesn't mean anything to you anymore, but it still means something to me. That's why I'm here. Not for the resort, not for the money. I'm here because I spent 7 years trying to forget the only promise I ever wanted to keep. Then she was gone. Ethan sat alone in the kitchen while his coffee went cold and the morning light crept across the floor. He thought about promises and leverage and someone who could have destroyed his life. He thought about a 23-year-old girl getting on a plane to Boston because she believed it was the only way to keep him safe. He thought about Vanessa Whitmore showing up at his door with expensive coffee and cheap excuses. And he thought about the one question she hadn't answered: who had the power to make her disappear? His phone buzzed, a text from Lily. Dad, there's a black car parked outside school. Is that her? Ethan's stomach dropped. He grabbed his keys and ran. Ethan made it to the school in 8 minutes, which was 4 minutes faster than physically possible without breaking at least 3 traffic laws. The black Mercedes sat in the visitor parking lot like a warning sign, rain streaking down its tinted windows. He threw his truck into park and was halfway across the lot when the principal's office door opened and Lily walked out, flanked by Vanessa and Mrs. Henderson, the school secretary who'd been working there since before Ethan was born. Dad! Lily's face lit up, then immediately shifted to concern when she saw his expression. What's wrong? Nothing, Ethan stopped, breathing hard, feeling like an idiot. Your text said there was a car. Yeah. Ms. Whitmore came to talk to Principal Garcia about the architecture mentorship program. Lily looked between them, confusion written all over her face. You know each other? Vanessa's expression was carefully neutral. We've met. Ms. Whitmore is being modest, Mrs. Henderson said, beaming. She's offered to fund a completely new STEAM initiative for the district. Computers, software, a partnership with the State Architecture Board to give students real-world experience. It's incredibly generous. Ethan stared at Vanessa. She wouldn't meet his eyes. Can I talk to you? He kept his voice level. Outside? Dad, Lily started. Now. Vanessa excused herself and followed him into the parking lot. The rain had slowed to a drizzle, the kind that soaked through everything without you noticing until you were already cold. Ethan turned on her the second they were out of earshot. What the hell are you doing? Funding an education program at my daughter's school, the day after I told you I wasn't selling. The two things aren't connected. Bullshit. Vanessa's composure finally cracked. You want to know what I'm doing? I'm trying to do something good for once. I'm trying to help kids like Lily who have actual talent and zero resources. I'm trying to make up for the fact that I spent 7 years building luxury resorts for rich people while this entire town fell apart. Is that so terrible? It is when you're using my daughter to manipulate me. I'm not... She stopped, took a breath. When she spoke again, her voice was quieter. Lily emailed me 3 weeks ago, before I came here, before I knew you'd adopted her. Ethan went still. What? She found my company website, Sent a message through the contact form asking if I did mentorships for students interested in sustainable architecture. I get about 50 of those emails a week. Most of them I delete, but hers was different. She sent drawings, floor plans for a house that collects rainwater and generates its own power using nothing but gravity and river current. It was brilliant, Ethan. Completely impractical, but brilliant. So I wrote back. And you didn't think to mention you were corresponding with my daughter? I didn't know she was your daughter. She signed the email L. Carter. I thought she was a college student. We exchanged maybe 5 messages before I came to Silverwood and saw the address on the resort proposal and realized Vanessa's voice caught. I realized the girl I'd been encouraging was being raised in the same house where you and I used to sit on the porch and talk about building impossible things. Ethan didn't know what to say to that. Behind them, the school bell rang. Kids started flooding out the main entrance, backpacks and noise, and the controlled chaos of middle school dismissal. She never told me she was emailing you, he said finally. She probably didn't think it mattered. To her, I was just some architect in Boston who answered questions. She had no idea I was... Vanessa stopped. The woman her dad used to love? The words came out harder than Ethan meant them. Vanessa looked away. I should go. Yeah, you should. But neither of them moved. Students streamed past, giving them curious looks. Ethan spotted Lily hanging back near the entrance, watching them with those 2 smart eyes that saw everything. The mentorship program, Vanessa said quietly. It's real. The funding isn't contingent on you selling the land. I meant what I told Principal Garcia. This town needs opportunities. Kids like Lily deserve better than what they're getting. Kids like Lily deserve honesty. I know. Do you? Because from where I'm standing, you've done nothing but lie since you got here. Vanessa's head snapped up. I haven't lied to you. You've been lying by omission for 7 years. That counts. I told you I can't talk about it. Yeah, I got that part. Ethan shoved his hands in his pockets to keep from doing something stupid with them. But you can fund education programs and show up at my daughter's school and drink coffee in my kitchen like we're old friends catching up. You can do everything except tell me the truth. The truth would destroy you. I'm already destroyed, Vanessa. You did that 7 years ago. Whatever you're protecting me from, I promise it can't be worse than what you already put me through. She looked at him for a long moment. Rain misted between them. Her hair was getting wet again, curling at the edges the way it used to before she learned to straighten it into submission. Victor Langford, she said finally. That's the name you want. My business partner. The man who identified your land for the resort project. What about him? He's the one who made me leave. Ethan's chest tightened. How? By threatening to destroy your construction business. By having connections to every contractor and developer in 3 states who could blacklist you overnight. By making it very clear that if I didn't get on that plane to Boston and cut all contact, you'd never work in this industry again. Vanessa's voice was flat, reciting facts like they were someone else's story. He said he was protecting the Whitmore family investment, that I was a liability, that my relationship with you was going to derail everything my family had built. Your family knew? My father knew. He's the one who brought Victor into the business in the first place. They went to school together. Victor was supposed to mentor me, help me learn the development side of architecture. Instead, She stopped. Instead, he what? Instead, he spent 2 years convincing my father I was too emotional to make rational business decisions, that I needed guidance, structure, someone to manage my impulsive tendencies. The bitterness in her voice could have stripped paint. My impulsive tendency to fall in love with a construction worker in a dying river town instead of marrying the Goldman Sachs analyst my father had picked out. Ethan felt something cold settle in his stomach. There was someone else? There was a plan, Victor's plan, my father's plan. Everyone had a plan for my life, except me. Vanessa wrapped her arms around herself. The analyst's name was Preston. We dated for 6 months after I moved to Boston. He proposed on schedule. I said yes on schedule. We were supposed to get married 2 years ago. What happened? I called it off 3 weeks before the wedding, gave back the ring, moved out of the apartment we'd picked together. Victor was furious, said I'd embarrassed the family, damaged important relationships, but I didn't care anymore. I was done being the person everyone else needed me to be. So you became a billionaire CEO instead. I became successful. There's a difference. Is there? Vanessa met his eyes. You tell me. You're the one who stayed in Silverwood fixing other people's houses while your own falls apart. Are you happy, Ethan, or are you just too stubborn to admit you made the wrong choice? The words hit like a slap. Before Ethan could respond, Lily appeared at his elbow. Can we go home now? I have a project due tomorrow, and you promised to help with the calculations. Ethan looked down at his daughter. She was watching Vanessa with open curiosity. No idea she was standing in the middle of a conversation that was tearing her father apart. Yeah, kid, let's go home. Miss Whitmore, are you coming? Both adults turned to stare at her. Lily shrugged. You said you wanted to see my designs for the rainwater collection house. I have all the drawings at home. Vanessa looked at Ethan. He should have said no, should have protected what was left of the boundaries between his life and hers. Instead, he heard himself say, 1 hour, that's it. Lily grinned. Vanessa nodded slowly, like she couldn't quite believe he'd agreed. They drove separately, Ethan's truck rattling along ahead of the Mercedes, Lily chattering about the mentorship program and how Miss Whitmore knew someone at MIT who did sustainable urban design. Ethan let her talk, only half listening, watching the black car follow them in his rearview mirror. Back at the house, Lily disappeared into her room and emerged with an armful of notebooks and loose papers covered in sketches. She spread them across the kitchen table while Vanessa pulled out a chair, and Ethan put on coffee he didn't want just to have something to do with his hands. This is the main structure, Lily explained, pushing a drawing toward Vanessa. See how the roof angles collect water into these channels? Then it filters through a series of tanks underneath the house. Gravity pulls it down, and the river current generates pressure to push it back up when you need it. Vanessa studied the drawing. The river current is inconsistent. What happens during drought season? Battery backup, solar panels on the south face charge during the day. Smart, but your filtration system is going to clog. You need a pre-filter here. She grabbed a pencil and started sketching. Something to catch sediment before it hits your main tanks. Oh. Lily leaned over, watching. That makes sense. They bent over the drawings together, Vanessa pointing out structural issues, and Lily defending her designs with the kind of passionate logic that reminded Ethan uncomfortably of arguments he used to have with Vanessa about whether art or function mattered more in architecture. He'd always said function, she'd always said both. Watching them now, he realized Lily had inherited Vanessa's answer without ever meeting her. Your dad says you want to be an architect, Vanessa said. Yeah, is that weird? Why would it be weird? I don't know. Most kids don't know what they want to do yet. Most kids haven't spent their entire lives watching someone build and fix things with their hands. Vanessa glanced at Ethan. Your dad's good at what he does, even if he won't admit it. He's the best, Lily said simply. He can fix anything. Not anything, Ethan muttered. The hours stretched into 2. Vanessa went through every one of Lily's notebooks, asking questions, offering suggestions, treating a 12-year-old's impossible house designs like they were legitimate architectural proposals. Lily soaked it up, her whole face bright with the kind of focused attention she usually reserved for building models or solving math problems Ethan couldn't help with anymore. Finally, Vanessa checked her watch. I should go. I have a conference call with the Boston office in 20 minutes. Will you come back? Lily asked. The question hung in the air. Vanessa looked at Ethan. That's up to your dad. Lily turned to him, hopeful and pleading. Ethan sighed. We'll see. That means yes, Lily informed Vanessa. When he says we'll see, it always means yes eventually. Good to know. Ethan walked Vanessa to the door while Lily stayed at the kitchen table, already sketching improvements to her filtration system. On the porch, Vanessa paused. Thank you for letting me stay. I didn't do it for you. I know. The rain had stopped. Evening light slanted through the trees, turning the river copper. Vanessa looked out at the water like she was trying to memorize it. I meant what I said earlier, she said quietly, about Victor. He's the reason I left, but he's also the reason I came back. What does that mean? It means the resort project was his idea from the beginning. He's the one who chose this location. He's the one who pushed the proposal through, and I think she stopped. What? I think he did it on purpose, to punish me for calling off the engagement, to prove he still has control. Ethan felt anger rise in his chest, sharp and hot. So this whole thing is what? Revenge? I don't know, maybe. Probably. Vanessa turned to face him. But it doesn't change the fact that the project is real. The money is real. And if you don't sell, Victor will find another way to get what he wants. Let him try. Ethan, I'm serious. Let him come after me. I've dealt with worse than some corporate asshole with a grudge. You don't understand what he's capable of. Then tell me. I can't. Jesus, Vanessa, you keep saying that. You can't tell me. You can't explain. You can't. He stopped, breathing hard. If you want me to trust you, you have to give me something. Anything. Because right now, all I see is someone who ran 7 years ago and is about to run again the second things get difficult. Vanessa's eyes flashed. You think this is easy for me? Coming back here? Seeing you? Watching you raise a daughter in the house where we used to talk about having kids of our own someday? You think I want any of this? Then why are you here? Because I owe you the truth, even if I can't tell you what it is. Because you deserve better than what I did. Because, her voice broke. Because I spent 7 years trying to forget you, and it didn't work. The confession hung between them. Ethan's hands clenched at his sides. You don't get to do this, he said quietly. You don't get to show up after 7 years and say things like that. I know. You broke me, Vanessa. You left, and I spent months waiting for a phone call that never came. I drove to Boston looking for you. Did you know that? 3 times. I drove 6 hours and sat outside the building where you worked and tried to convince myself to go inside. I never did. Because I knew if I saw you and you told me you didn't want me anymore, I wouldn't survive it. Tears slipped down Vanessa's face. I'm sorry. Sorry doesn't fix what you did. I know. They stood there while the light faded and the river ran, and somewhere inside the house, Lily was probably listening to every word through the window she'd definitely cracked open. I should go, Vanessa said finally. This time, Ethan didn't argue. She walked to her car and he watched her leave, and when her taillights disappeared down the drive, he went inside and found Lily exactly where he expected to find her, standing by the kitchen window with guilt written all over her face. You were eavesdropping. You were yelling on the porch. That's basically public domain. Despite everything, Ethan almost smiled. Go to bed. It's 6:30. Then go do homework in bed. Lily crossed her arms. Are you okay? I'm fine. Liar. Lily, she loves you. You know that, right? Ethan looked at his daughter, 12 years old and too smart for her own good, standing in the kitchen of a house that might not be theirs much longer, trying to fix problems that had nothing to do with her. It's more complicated than that, he said. No, it's not. She loves you and you love her, and you're both too stubborn to do anything about it. Where did you learn to talk like that? Romance novels. Ms. Chen in the library has a whole section. Ethan pinched the bridge of his nose. We're going to have a conversation about age-appropriate reading material. Good luck with that. Lily grabbed her notebooks off the table. For what it's worth, I like her. She's smart, and she actually listens when I talk about my designs instead of just nodding like most adults do. I listen. You listen, and then you tell me why it won't work structurally. She tells me how to make it work. That's called being an architect. That's called believing in people. Lily headed for the hallway, then stopped. Dad? Yeah? If she comes back tomorrow, can you try not to yell at her on the porch? The neighbors are starting to talk. She disappeared before Ethan could respond. He stood alone in the kitchen, looking at the drawings Vanessa had marked up with notes and suggestions. Evidence of 2 hours where his daughter got the kind of attention she deserved and he'd never been able to give her. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Thank you for today. I know it wasn't easy. V. Ethan stared at the message. He should delete it. Block the number. Draw a line before this became something neither of them could control. Instead, he typed back. Lily wants you to come back tomorrow. Her words, not mine. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. What about your words? Ethan's thumb hovered over the screen. He thought about promises and second chances and all the ways this could go wrong. Tomorrow, 4 p.m. Don't be late. The response came immediately. I won't. Ethan put his phone down and looked around his grandfather's kitchen. The leaky faucet, the wobbling chair, the drawings scattered across the table, evidence of a life held together by duct tape and determination, and the stubborn refusal to give up on things other people would have abandoned years ago. He had no idea Vanessa would show up the next day with legal documents that would change everything. But that night, standing in the kitchen where they used to make breakfast together before everything fell apart, he let himself imagine, just for a second, that maybe some things were worth fighting for even when you had no idea how to win. The next morning started with rain again, the kind of gray drizzle that made the river look like hammered steel. Ethan dropped Lily at school and went to work on a renovation project across town, framing out a bathroom for a couple who'd bought a foreclosure and had more ambition than budget. His hands knew the work by muscle memory: measure, cut, nail, check level, repeat, which left his brain too much freedom to wander. He kept thinking about what Vanessa had said, about Victor Langford, about being removed instead of leaving, about threats and leverage and a 23-year-old girl forced to choose between love and survival. By noon, he'd decided to do something stupid. The Riverbend Inn sat on the edge of town, the kind of place that had been nice in the 70s and was now just clean and functional. Ethan parked his truck in the lot and walked into the lobby, tracking mud on carpet that had seen worse. Help you? The desk clerk was maybe 20, college kid home for spring break, barely looking up from his phone. I'm looking for Vanessa Whitmore. She's staying here. Can't give out room numbers. Ethan pulled a 20 from his wallet and set it on the counter. The kid glanced at it, then at Ethan, then pocketed the bill. Second floor, room 214, but if she complains, I never saw you. Deal. Ethan took the stairs 2 at a time, his heart pounding harder than it should for a conversation he hadn't planned. He knocked on 214 before he could talk himself out of it. Vanessa opened the door in jeans and a sweater, her hair wet like she'd just gotten out of the shower. She looked surprised, then concerned. Ethan, what's wrong? I need to know about Victor Langford, everything, right now. She stepped back, letting him in. The room was generic hotel beige, but Vanessa had made it hers. Laptop open on the desk, papers everywhere, an empty coffee cup from the place in town that charged $5 for espresso. Tell me, Ethan said. Vanessa closed the door. What do you want to know? Start with how he knew about us, how he knew exactly what threats would make you leave. She sat on the edge of the bed, hands folded in her lap. I told him. When I first started working with him, before Boston, when I was still in grad school, he asked about my personal life. Seemed like normal mentor conversation. I mentioned I was dating someone back home, someone my father wouldn't approve of. And he used that against you. He used everything against me. He spent 2 years making himself indispensable to my father while convincing me I wasn't ready to run the company on my own. Every mistake I made, he was there to fix it. Every success, he took partial credit. By the time I realized what he was doing, he'd positioned himself as the logical successor to my father's business. So why is he your partner now instead of your boss? Vanessa's laugh was sharp. Because my father died 3 years ago and left the company to me in his will. Victor was furious. He'd spent a decade grooming himself for that position. Instead, he got a partnership deal and a minority stake. He's still working with you. He's still working against me. Every decision I make, he undermines. Every project I propose, he finds problems. The Silverwood Resort was supposed to be my chance to prove I could handle a major development without his interference. She looked up at Ethan. Instead, he turned it into leverage. Again. How? By picking your land, by making the entire project contingent on acquiring that specific property. He knew I'd have to face you eventually. He knew it would destroy me. Ethan sat down in the desk chair. His work boots left mud prints on the carpet. That's insane. That's Victor. Why haven't you fired him? Because he owns 49% of the company. Because he has connections I need. Because if I force him out, he'll take half the business with him and destroy what my father built out of spite. Vanessa's voice was tired. I've been trying to buy him out for 2 years. He won't sell. He'd rather watch everything burn than let me have control. So he's holding your company hostage. More or less. Ethan leaned back, processing. And the resort project? Is real. The development proposal is sound. The economic impact would actually help Silverwood, but Victor structured it so that if we can't acquire your land, the entire project collapses, which makes me look incompetent, which gives him ammunition to argue I shouldn't be running the company. That's brilliant and cruel. I know. Vanessa stood, pacing the small room. I've spent 3 months trying to find a legal way out. There isn't one. The contracts are airtight. If I want to save the project, I have to convince you to sell. If I want to save my company, I have to convince you to sell. If I want to prove Victor doesn't control me anymore, she stopped. You have to convince me to sell. Yes. Ethan watched her pace. The hotel room felt too small for the weight of what she was carrying. What if I did? He asked quietly. Vanessa stopped. What? What if I sold? What happens to you? The project moves forward. I prove I can close a major deal. Victor loses his ammunition. And what happens to me? She looked at him. You get $3 million and the chance to start over somewhere else. That's not what I asked. I know. They stared at each other across the ugly hotel carpet. Ethan could hear his own heartbeat, could feel the question he really wanted to ask sitting heavy in his chest. If I sell, he said slowly, do you stay in Silverwood, or do you go back to Boston and I never see you again? Vanessa's breath caught. Ethan, answer the question. I don't know. Yes, you do. She turned away, looking out the window at the rain. The project would take 2 years to complete. I'd have to be here regularly, overseeing construction, managing contractors, dealing with permits. So yes, you'd see me. That's not the same as staying. No, it's not. Would you want to stay? The question hung between them. Outside, a truck rumbled past. The rain kept falling. Vanessa's reflection in the window looked small and lost. I don't know how to answer that, she said finally. Part of me wants to say yes. Part of me knows it's impossible. Part of me is terrified of what happens if I let myself want it. Ethan stood, crossed the room, stopped close enough to touch her, but didn't. I'm not selling, he said. Vanessa nodded, like she'd expected that answer. But I'm not telling you to leave either. She turned to face him. They were close enough that Ethan could see the gold flecks in her eyes, the same ones he used to count when they lay on the dock together and talked about building impossible things. What are you telling me? She asked. I'm telling you to figure out what you want, not what Victor wants, not what the company needs, what Vanessa Whitmore wants. And when you know the answer, come find me. And if I don't know, then keep coming to the house at 4 o'clock. Keep helping Lily with her designs. Keep drinking coffee in my kitchen and pretending we're not both terrified of what happens next. I am terrified, Vanessa admitted. Good. So am I. They stood there, not quite touching, the space between them charged with 7 years of silence and regret and something that felt dangerously close to hope. Ethan's phone buzzed. He ignored it. It buzzed again. You should get that, Vanessa said. He checked the screen. 3 missed calls from Lily's school. His stomach dropped. I have to go. What's wrong? I don't know. He was out the door before Vanessa could respond, taking the stairs 3 at a time, his phone already dialing the school back. Mrs. Henderson answered on the first ring. Mr. Carter, we've been trying to reach you. There's been an incident with Lily. Ethan's hands went cold. Is she hurt? No, but she's very upset. A man came to the school asking about her, said he was from Child Protective Services conducting a routine follow-up. But when Principal Garcia called CPS to verify, they had no record of any visits scheduled. Where's Lily now? In the office. She's fine, but she's asking for you. I'm on my way. He made it to the school in 6 minutes. Illegal speed and adrenaline. Lily sat in the principal's office looking small and scared, and the second she saw him, she launched herself into his arms. Hey, it's okay. I got you. He knew my name, Lily said into his shoulder. He knew about Mom. He knew I was adopted. How did he know all that? Principal Garcia stood. Mr. Carter, the man left when we started asking questions, but he gave us a business card. I think you should see it. She handed Ethan a card. Heavy stock. Embossed lettering. Victor Langford, Senior Partner, Whitmore Langford. Development Corporation. Ethan's vision went red. Did he touch her? No, he only spoke to her for a moment before a teacher intervened. But, Mr. Carter, I've already contacted the police. A strange man impersonating a CPS agent and asking about a minor student is a serious matter. Ethan barely heard her. He was already texting Vanessa with one hand while holding Lily with the other. Your partner just showed up at Lily's school pretending to be CPS. We need to talk. Now. The response came back immediately. I'm on my way. She beat the police to the school by 3 minutes. Vanessa walked into the principal's office like she owned it, which in a way she almost did now that she'd funded half the school's new programs. But the confidence dropped the second she saw Lily pressed against Ethan's side, her face blotchy from crying. What did he do? Vanessa's voice was ice. Principal Garcia explained the situation again while Ethan watched Vanessa's expression shift from confusion to understanding to something that looked like murder. When Garcia finished, Vanessa pulled out her phone and dialed without asking permission. Victor, what the hell were you thinking? Ethan couldn't hear the response, but he watched Vanessa's jaw tighten. I don't care what you thought you were doing. You approached a 12-year-old child. You impersonated a government agent. Do you have any idea how many laws you just broke? More talking from the other end. Vanessa's knuckles went white around her phone. This isn't negotiation, Victor. This is me telling you that if you ever go near Ethan Carter's family again, I will personally destroy every contract you've ever signed and make sure you never work in development again. Do you understand me? She hung up before he could respond. The silence in the office was thick enough to choke on. I'm so sorry, Vanessa said, looking at Ethan. I had no idea he would. I never thought He threatened my daughter. Ethan's voice was quiet, dangerous. Your business partner showed up at her school, lied to get access to her, and scared her badly enough that she's still shaking, so you can save your apologies. Dad, it's okay, Lily said, but her voice trembled. It's not okay. Ethan looked at Principal Garcia. I want a restraining order, whatever it takes. That man doesn't get within 100 yards of this school or my property. The police are on their way to take statements, Garcia said. They'll help you file the appropriate paperwork. A sheriff's deputy arrived 10 minutes later, young guy named Morrison, who'd graduated from Silverwood High 3 years ahead of Ethan. He took statements from everyone, examined Victor's business card like it was evidence in a murder trial, and promised to follow up with both CPS and the district attorney's office. I'll be honest with you, Carter, Morrison said as he was leaving. Unless he actually touched your daughter or made explicit threats, it's going to be hard to make charges stick. Impersonating CPS is illegal, but he could claim it was a misunderstanding, that he was there on behalf of the development company doing community outreach. Community outreach at a middle school? I'm just telling you what a lawyer would argue. But a restraining order that we can probably get, especially if Ms. Whitmore is willing to testify about his pattern of behavior. Vanessa nodded. Whatever you need. Morrison left. Principal Garcia excused Lily from her afternoon classes. Ethan carried his daughter to the truck, and when he turned around, Vanessa was standing by her Mercedes looking lost. Can I follow you home? She asked. Ethan wanted to say no, wanted to protect what was left of the walls between them, but Lily spoke up from the truck's passenger seat. Please, Dad. I want her there. So Vanessa followed them back to the river house, and the three of them ended up in the kitchen again like it was becoming a habit. Ethan made hot chocolate because Lily liked it sweet enough to rot teeth, and it gave him something to do besides think about what he'd do to Victor Langford if he ever saw him in person. He wanted to scare you, Vanessa said, sitting across from Lily at the table. That's all this was. He was trying to intimidate your dad by proving he could get to you. Why? Because your dad won't sell the land Victor needs for the resort project, and Victor doesn't handle rejection well. Lily looked at Ethan. Is that true? He came after me because you won't sell our house? No, Ethan said firmly. He came after you because he's a vindictive bastard who thinks threatening kids makes him powerful. That's on him, not me. But if you sold, we're not selling. But if it would keep us safe, Lily. Ethan knelt down so he was eye level with his daughter. Listen to me. What happened today was not okay. It was illegal and wrong, and it's not going to happen again. But we don't let bullies win by giving them what they want. We fight back. Understand? Lily nodded, but she didn't look convinced. She wrapped her hands around her hot chocolate mug and stared into it like the answer might be floating in the marshmallows. Vanessa's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, and her face went pale. "What?" Ethan asked. "Email from the company lawyers. Victor's filing a motion to expedite the land acquisition process. He's claiming the development timeline is at risk due to unreasonable seller delays." She looked up. "He's trying to force a sale through legal channels. Can he do that?" "Technically, no, but he can make it expensive and time-consuming enough that most people would rather settle than fight. He knows you don't have the resources for a prolonged legal battle." Ethan's hands clenched. "How long do I have?" "The motion hearing is scheduled for next week. If the judge sides with him, they could start eminent domain proceedings within 30 days. Eminent domain? This isn't a highway project, it's a luxury resort. Doesn't matter. If Victor can prove the development serves the public good, jobs, tax revenue, infrastructure improvement, he can make the case for forcing the sale. Vanessa set her phone down. "I've seen him do it before. He's very good at finding the legal angles nobody else considers." Lily was watching them both, her hot chocolate forgotten. "What's eminent domain?" "It's when the government takes your property, whether you want to sell or not," Ethan said. "Usually for roads or schools or things the whole community needs." "But we need our house." "I know, kid. So what do we do?" That was the question, wasn't it? Ethan looked at Vanessa, who looked back at him with something that might have been guilt or regret or just exhaustion. "We fight," he said. "And we find a lawyer who knows how to beat Victor at his own game." "I know someone," Vanessa said quietly. "In Boston. She specializes in land use law and development disputes. She's expensive, but she's good." "I can't afford expensive." "I can." Ethan stared at her. "Absolutely not." "Ethan, I'm not taking money from you to fight your own company. How would that even work?" "It would work because Victor crossed a line today. He threatened a child. That's not business. That's personal. And I'm not going to stand by and let him destroy your life just to prove a point to me." "This isn't your fight." "Yes, it is. It's been my fight since the day Victor made me leave Silverwood. I've spent 7 years letting him control my decisions because I was too scared to stand up to him. I'm done being scared." Lily looked between them. "I think you should let her help, Dad." "Lily, I'm serious. She knows this stuff. You don't. And if this Victor guy is as bad as she says, we need someone on our side who knows how he thinks." Ethan wanted to argue, wanted to maintain the fiction that he could handle this alone. But he looked at his daughter's scared face and Vanessa's determined one and realized he was outnumbered. "Fine," he said, "but I'm paying you back. Every cent. I don't care how long it takes. We can negotiate terms later. We're negotiating them now. I pay you back with interest or I don't take the help." Vanessa looked at him for a long moment. "You're impossible." "Yeah, I've been told." Something that might have been a smile flickered across her face. She pulled out her phone and started typing. "I'm emailing Catherine now. She'll want to see all the documentation, the original purchase offers, Victor's business card from today, any communication you've had with the company. I've got files. Everything going back 3 months when the first lawyer called." "Good. Send them to me tonight. I'll forward them to Catherine and set up a conference call for tomorrow." "That fast?" "Victor's moving fast. We have to move faster." They spent the next hour going through paperwork, Vanessa taking photos of documents with her phone while Ethan dug through filing cabinets that hadn't been organized in decades. Lily eventually retreated to her room to work on homework she probably wouldn't be able to focus on. By the time they finished, the kitchen table was buried in paper, and Vanessa looked like she'd been through a war. "I should go," she said, checking her watch. "Catherine's in a different time zone. If I call her now, I can catch her before she leaves the office." Ethan walked her to the door. Outside, the rain had stopped, but the sky was still gray, evening coming early the way it did in March. Vanessa paused on the porch. "I meant what I said earlier, about Victor crossing a line. I know. I'm going to fix this. You can't fix everything, Vanessa. I can try." They stood there in the fading light, and Ethan felt something shift between them. Not forgiveness exactly. but maybe the beginning of something that could turn into forgiveness given enough time. "Why are you really doing this?" he asked. "The lawyer, the help, all of it." Vanessa looked out at the river. "Because 7 years ago, I let Victor convince me that walking away was the only option, that staying would destroy both of us, and I believed him. I got on that plane and I cut all contact, and I told myself it was for the best." She turned back to Ethan. "But it wasn't for the best. It was the worst decision I ever made. And I've spent 7 years living with the consequences. So maybe I can't fix what I did, but I can make sure Victor doesn't get to do it again. This isn't about redemption. No, it's about being the person I should have been 7 years ago. The one who fights instead of runs." Ethan didn't know what to say to that. Vanessa seemed to take his silence as dismissal. She started toward her car, then stopped. "Ethan, what you said earlier about figuring out what I want." "Yeah, I know what I want. I've known for 7 years. I was just too much of a coward to admit it." She got in her car and drove away before he could respond. Ethan stood on the porch watching her taillights disappear, his heart doing complicated things in his chest. Inside, he found Lily at the kitchen table instead of in her room doing homework. She had one of her notebooks open, but she wasn't drawing. She was just sitting there, staring at the page. "You okay, kid?" "That man today, Mr. Langford, he seemed nice at first." Ethan's blood went cold. "What do you mean?" "When he came to talk to me, before the teacher showed up. He asked about my drawings, said he'd heard I was talented, asked if I wanted to be an architect when I grew up." Lily's voice was small. "I said yes. And he said that was wonderful, that the world needed more young women in architecture. Then he asked about you." "What did he ask?" "If you were happy here, in Silverwood, if we ever talked about moving somewhere with better opportunities." She looked up at Ethan. "I told him we were fine here, that we liked our house, and he got this weird smile and said it was good to have roots, but sometimes roots need to be transplanted to help them grow." Ethan sat down heavily. "Did he say anything else?" "Just that he hoped we'd make the right decision. Then Mrs. Patterson came over and asked who he was, and he gave her the business card and left." "You should have told me this earlier, when the deputy was here." "I know. I'm sorry. I didn't want to make it worse. He seemed nice, Dad, like he actually cared. But the way Ms. Whitmore reacted when she heard his name..." Lily's voice trailed off. "He's not nice, is he?" "No, kid, he's not." They sat in silence for a while. Outside, the river kept running, indifferent to human drama. Finally, Lily spoke again. "Do you love her?" Ethan didn't have to ask who she meant. "It's complicated. That's what adults say when the answer is yes, but they don't want to admit it." "When did you get so smart?" "I've always been smart. You just notice more when it's inconvenient." Lily closed her notebook. "For what it's worth, I think she loves you too. I saw how she looked at you today, when we were in the principal's office and you were holding me. She looked like she wanted to be part of that, part of us." "Lily, I'm just saying, if you wanted to give her a chance, I wouldn't mind. I know she's the one who left. I know that hurt you, but people make mistakes, right? And she's trying to fix them now." Ethan reached across the table and squeezed his daughter's hand. "When did you become the parent in this relationship?" "Probably around the time you started making hot chocolate with extra marshmallows instead of dealing with your feelings." Despite everything, Ethan laughed. "Go do your homework." "Fine, but think about what I said." She headed to her room, leaving Ethan alone with his thoughts and a kitchen full of legal documents. His phone buzzed. A text from Vanessa. "Catherine can meet tomorrow at 2 p.m. via video call. Does that work for you?" "I'll make it work," he typed back. "Thank you for trusting me with this." Ethan stared at the message. Trust was a strong word for what he felt, but maybe it was a start. "Don't make me regret it," he sent. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. "I won't." The next day, Ethan took the afternoon off work, which his boss accepted with the kind of resigned sigh that meant he'd been expecting it. The video call with Catherine Brennan happened in Ethan's kitchen, his laptop propped on a stack of books, so the camera wouldn't show the water-stained ceiling. Catherine was maybe 50, gray hair cut severe, eyes that probably missed nothing. She listened to Ethan explain the situation without interrupting, occasionally making notes on a legal pad. Okay, she said when he finished, let's talk strategy. Victor Langford's motion for expedited acquisition has zero legal standing. You're a private landowner, the property isn't designated for public use, and there's no existing zoning that would support eminent domain. But, there's always a but, Ethan said. But he's going to argue that the development project has already received preliminary approval from the County Planning Commission, that the economic impact study shows significant public benefit, that your refusal to sell is holding up jobs and tax revenue the community desperately needs. None of that is grounds for forced sale, but it creates political pressure. Judges are elected officials. They don't like being seen as obstacles to economic development. So what do I do? You let me handle the legal arguments, but you need to handle the public relations side. If this becomes a story about a greedy developer trying to steal a family home, you win. If it becomes a story about one stubborn landowner blocking progress, you lose. I'm not greedy. I just don't want to sell. I know that. The judge knows that. But the court of public opinion doesn't care about nuance. They care about narrative. Catherine glanced at something off screen. Vanessa sent me background on your property. Your grandfather built the house. You've lived there your whole life. You're raising an adopted daughter there. That's good. We can work with that. I'm not turning my family into a publicity stunt. I'm not asking you to. I'm asking you to tell your story before Victor tells his version of it. Ethan rubbed his face. What would that look like? Local media? Interview with the Silverwood Gazette? Maybe a statement at the next town council meeting? Nothing dramatic. Just you explaining why this land matters and why you're not selling. And if that doesn't work, then we go to trial, and I make Victor Langford wish he'd never heard of eminent domain. Catherine's smile was sharp. But let's hope it doesn't come to that. Trials are expensive and unpredictable. Better to win in the court of public opinion first. They talked for another 30 minutes about timeline and strategy and billable hours that made Ethan's head hurt. When the call ended, he sat in his kitchen feeling like he'd just agreed to something that was going to consume his life for the foreseeable future. His phone rang. Vanessa. How'd it go? She asked. Your lawyer friend is terrifying. That's why she's good. Did she give you a plan? Yeah, public relations, media interviews, making myself look sympathetic. You are sympathetic. I'm a guy who doesn't want to sell his house. That's not exactly headline news. It is when the alternative is letting a corporation bully you out of your home. Vanessa paused. Listen, I know this is hard, but Catherine's right. If you can make this about David versus Goliath instead of progress versus stubbornness, you win. I don't want to be David. I just want to be left alone. I know, but that's not an option anymore. Ethan heard something in her voice. What happened? Victor called an emergency board meeting for tomorrow morning. He's pushing for a vote to authorize legal action against you if you don't accept the purchase offer by end of business Friday. That's 3 days from now. I know. Can he do that? If the board votes yes, absolutely. And he's been working the other board members for weeks, promising them returns on investment, painting me as too emotionally compromised to make rational decisions. Frustration bled through her words. He's going to force my hand. Either I support legal action against you, or I look like I'm sabotaging the company out of personal sentiment. What are you going to do? Silence on the other end. Then, quietly, I'm going to call his bluff. Vanessa, I'm flying to Boston tonight for the board meeting, and I'm going to tell them everything. About Victor manipulating my relationship with you 7 years ago. About him choosing this location specifically to punish me. About him approaching Lily at her school. I'm going to make it clear that this isn't business. It's personal vendetta. And if they still vote to authorize legal action after that, then I'll know where I stand. You'll lose your company. Maybe, or maybe I'll finally be free of Victor Langford. Ethan's chest tightened. You don't have to do this. Yes, I do. I should have done it 7 years ago. If you lose, then I lose. But at least I'll lose on my own terms instead of his. They sat in silence, the phone line crackling softly between them. Ethan thought about what Lily had said, about second chances and people making mistakes and trying to fix them. When do you leave? He asked. My flight's at 7. I'll be back Saturday morning regardless of how the meeting goes. Good luck. Thanks. Another pause. Ethan? Yeah? If this goes badly tomorrow, if I lose the company, would you consider selling then? To someone else. Not Victor, but another development company that could keep the project alive without him involved. No. Even if it means I lose everything? Especially then, because if you lose everything fighting for this land, the least I can do is make sure the fight meant something. He heard her breath catch. You're impossible. Yeah, I've been told. I have to go, pack, prepare notes, figure out how to tell a board of directors their senior partner is a manipulative bastard without getting sued for slander. Vanessa? Yeah? Kick his ass. She laughed, and it sounded genuine for the first time since she'd come back to Silverwood. I'll try. After she hung up, Ethan sat in the kitchen watching evening light creep across the floor. Tomorrow Vanessa would walk into a conference room in Boston and blow up her entire career trying to save his land. The day after, Victor's motion hearing would determine whether Ethan could keep fighting or would lose everything to legal fees and political pressure. And somewhere in the middle of all that, he was supposed to figure out what he actually wanted. Not for Lily, not for the house, not for the memory of his grandfather, for himself. His phone buzzed again. This time it was a local number he didn't recognize. This is Ethan. Mr. Carter, this is Jennifer Park from the Silverwood Gazette. I understand you're in a legal dispute with Whitmore Langford Development over your family property. Would you be willing to give a statement? Ethan thought about Catherine's advice, about public opinion and narrative control, and telling his story before someone else told it for him. Yeah, he said, I would. The interview happened the next morning at the house. Jennifer Park sitting across from him with a recorder and a notebook while Lily hovered in the background pretending not to listen. Park was mid-30s, serious eyes, the kind of journalist who'd probably started in a bigger city and ended up in Silverwood because she cared more about stories than career advancement. Tell me about the house, she said. So Ethan told her, about his grandfather building it in 1952 with his own hands and whatever lumber he could afford. About 3 generations of Carters living here, fixing what broke, adding rooms when kids were born, watching the river rise and fall with the seasons. About Lily coming to live with him 3 years ago and how she'd walked through every room touching the walls like she was trying to memorize them. This isn't just property, he said. It's proof that my family existed, that we built something that lasted. And I'm not giving that up so some corporation can turn it into a parking lot for rich people's vacation homes. Park took notes, asking follow-up questions about the development proposal and Victor's approach at the school and what Ethan hoped would happen next. He answered honestly, maybe more honestly than was smart, and when she finally turned off her recorder, she looked at him with something that might have been respect. This'll run tomorrow morning, she said. Front page, probably. Fair warning? Whitmore Langford's PR team will respond. They always do. Let them. You're not worried about blowback? I'm worried about losing my home. Everything else is just noise. Park left. Ethan spent the rest of the day trying to work, but mostly just staring at his phone, waiting for news from Boston. Vanessa's board meeting was scheduled for 11. By 1 o'clock, he still hadn't heard anything. By 3, he was climbing the walls. By 5, when Lily got home from school, he'd given up pretending to be calm. Still nothing? She asked. Nothing. Maybe that's good. Maybe it means she's winning. Or maybe it means she's in there fighting for her life and can't get to her phone. Lily sat down next to him on the couch. Want to watch something terrible on TV to distract yourself? Yeah, kid, I really do. They made it through half an episode of a cooking competition show before Ethan's phone finally rang. Vanessa. He answered so fast he nearly dropped it. How bad is it? I'm still employed. Her voice sounded hollow, exhausted. Barely. What happened? The board voted 5-4 against authorizing immediate legal action, but Victor convinced them to give you one final purchase offer, $4 million instead of $3 million. You have until Monday to respond. If you refuse, they'll revisit the legal action vote. So you bought me 3 days. I bought you 3 days and destroyed any working relationship I had with half the board. Victor's already calling for a vote of no confidence in my leadership. He says I'm letting personal feelings compromise the company's interests. Is he right? Probably, but I don't care anymore. Vanessa laughed, but there was no humor in it. I stood up in front of 12 people and told them everything, Ethan. About Victor manipulating me 7 years ago, about him approaching Lily, about him structuring this entire project as revenge. And you know what the worst part is? What? Half of them believed me and still voted for the legal action because the project makes financial sense. They don't care about Victor's motives as long as the numbers work. Ethan closed his eyes. I'm sorry. Don't be. I knew what I was risking when I walked in there, and I'd do it again. Even if it costs you the company? Even then. They sat in silence. Ethan could hear airport announcements in the background on Vanessa's end. Where are you? He asked. Logan Airport, waiting for my flight back. Should land around 9. You don't have to come back tonight. You sound exhausted. I want to come back. She stopped. I need to see the river. Is that stupid? No, it's not stupid. I'll text you when I land, okay? Ethan? Yeah? Thank you for not selling, even after everything I just put on the line. Thank you for not making it easy for them. You're welcome. After she hung up, Lily looked at him with knowing eyes. She's coming back tonight? Apparently. Because she needs to see the river. That's what she said. Uh-huh. Lily stood up. I'm going to my room. When she gets here, you two should probably talk. Actually, talk. Not just dance around things and pretend you don't have feelings. When did you become a relationship counselor? When my dad started acting like a character in a romance novel who's too stubborn to admit he's still in love. She disappeared down the hallway before Ethan could argue. He sat alone on the couch, lights off, watching darkness settle over the river. The house creaked and settled around him. Somewhere in Boston, Vanessa was boarding a plane that would bring her back to Silverwood, back to the place she'd run from 7 years ago, back to him. His phone buzzed with a text from Catherine Brennan. Saw the Gazette article online. Perfect. Keep this energy for the hearing Monday. We're going to win this. Another text, this one from a number he didn't recognize. Mr. Carter, this is Victor Langford. We should talk before this situation becomes irreparable. Call me. Ethan deleted Victor's message without responding. At 9:30, headlights swept across his living room. Ethan was already on the porch when Vanessa's Mercedes pulled up. She got out looking like she'd been through a war, suit wrinkled, hair falling out of whatever style she'd tried to maintain, dark circles under her eyes. Hey, she said. Hey yourself. Can we walk? Down to the dock. Yeah, let me grab a jacket. They walked in silence through the dark, following a path Ethan could navigate blind. The dock creaked under their weight, old wood protesting like it always did. They sat side by side, legs dangling over the edge, the river black and silver under a quarter moon. I didn't think I'd ever sit here again, Vanessa said quietly. Why'd you come back then? Really? Not for the resort, not for Victor. Why? She didn't answer for a long time. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. Because I never stopped loving you, and I was tired of pretending I did. Ethan's breath caught. He turned to look at her, but she was staring out at the water, tears tracking down her face. 7 years, she continued. I dated other people. I built a career. I became successful by every measure that's supposed to matter. And none of it felt real because I kept thinking about this dock and this river and the promise we made. I kept thinking maybe if I came back even just to see the place one more time, I could finally let go. But then I saw you. Her voice broke. And I realized I never wanted to let go. I just convinced myself I had to. Ethan reached for her hand. She let him take it. Victor was right about one thing, Vanessa said. Staying would have destroyed us. 7 years ago, I wasn't strong enough to fight him. I wasn't strong enough to risk everything for what we had. But I am now. And if I lose the company trying to save this place, trying to save us, that's a trade I'm willing to make. There is no us, Vanessa, not after 7 years. I know, but there could be. If you wanted, if you could forgive me. Ethan looked at their hands intertwined in the moonlight. I don't know if I can. That's fair, but I want to try. She turned to face him, hope and fear warring in her expression. Yeah? Yeah, I'm still angry. I'm still hurt. But Lily's right. People make mistakes, and you're here now trying to fix them. That has to count for something. It counts for everything, Vanessa whispered. They sat there while the river ran and the night deepened, and somewhere back at the house, Lily was probably watching from her bedroom window with a smile on her face. Ethan thought about promises and second chances and all the ways love could break you and put you back together differently than before. Monday's going to be bad, he said. The hearing. Victor's going to throw everything he has at us. I know. And even if we win, this isn't over. He'll find another angle, another way to come after the land. Probably. So what do we do? Vanessa squeezed his hand. We fight. Together this time. Together, Ethan repeated. It felt like another promise, one they might actually be able to keep. They stayed on the dock until the cold drove them back inside. And when Vanessa finally left for her hotel room that night, Ethan stood at the window watching her taillights disappear and wondered if he'd just made the smartest or stupidest decision of his life. Probably both. The Silverwood Gazette article hit the stands Friday morning with a headline that made Ethan wince. Local father fights corporate giant for family home. Jennifer Park had written it straight, no embellishment needed, just Ethan's words and the facts about Victor's visit to the school. By noon, the story had been picked up by the regional news network. By 3 o'clock, a camera crew was parked outside Ethan's house asking for an interview. Absolutely not, Ethan told them through the screen door. Just 5 minutes, Mr. Carter. Your story is resonating with people. David versus Goliath, the little guy standing up to corporate greed. I'm not doing this for publicity. I'm doing it because it's my house. The reporter, a woman in her 40s with too much makeup and determined eyes, softened her approach. I understand, but there are thousands of families facing similar situations across the country. Your willingness to fight could inspire them. Or it could make me look like an idiot when I lose. Do you think you're going to lose? Ethan thought about Catherine Brennan's sharp eyes and sharper legal arguments. Thought about Vanessa standing in front of a board of directors and risking everything. Thought about Lily watching from the kitchen window right now, listening to every word. No, he said. I don't think I'm going to lose. Then let us tell your story. He agreed to 5 minutes on the porch. It turned into 20. The reporter asked about his grandfather, about Lily, about why this particular piece of land mattered when there were plenty of other places to live. Ethan answered as honestly as he could without sounding like he was performing for the camera. It's not about the land, he said finally. It's about the fact that some things shouldn't have a price tag. Family, history, the place where your daughter feels safe. You can't put a dollar value on that, no matter how many zeros you add. The segment aired that night on the 6 o'clock news. Ethan's phone exploded with texts from people he hadn't talked to in years, all of them offering support or legal advice, or just telling him they were rooting for him. His father called from the nursing home where he'd been living since the stroke, voice shaky but proud. Your grandfather would be proud too, his father said. Stubborn old bastard never sold anything in his life, even when he should have. I learned from the best, Ethan replied. Vanessa texted around 7. Saw the interview. You were perfect. I looked like I hadn't slept in a week, Ethan typed back. You looked honest. That matters more. He was about to respond when another text came through, this one from Victor Langford's personal number. Enjoy your 15 minutes of fame. It won't change the outcome on Monday. Ethan showed the message to Catherine on their nightly check-in call. She made a note of it. He's rattled, she said. Good. Rattled opponents make mistakes. What kind of mistakes? The kind where they overreach in court and give me ammunition? Keep doing what you're doing. Stay visible. Stay sympathetic. And for the love of everything, don't respond to his texts. Saturday morning brought rain again, the kind that felt personal. Ethan was fixing the perpetually leaky faucet in the bathroom when someone knocked. He opened the door to find Vanessa standing there with 2 coffees and a box from the bakery in town. Breakfast? She offered. It's 10 o'clock. Late breakfast. Can I come in? Lily appeared behind Ethan, still in pajamas, hair sticking up in 6 directions. Is that from Miller's Bakery? Apple turnovers and cinnamon rolls. You can definitely come in. They ended up at the kitchen table again, Lily claiming 2 cinnamon rolls before Ethan could stop her. Vanessa looked better than she had in days, like a full night's sleep had put some life back into her. "I've been thinking," she said, "about Monday, about what happens if we win." "When we win," Lily corrected around a mouthful of pastry. "When we win," Vanessa amended. "Victor's not going to just accept defeat and move on. He'll appeal. He'll find another angle. He'll make this as painful as possible." "I know," Ethan said. "So I have a proposal. A real one this time, not a corporate offer disguised as conversation." Vanessa set down her coffee. "If we win on Monday, I'm going to buy out Victor's share of the company." Ethan stared at her. "With what money? You said he won't sell." "He will if the offer is good enough. And I've been running the numbers. Between my personal assets, the company reserves, and a loan I can secure against future projects, I can put together enough to make him an offer he can't refuse." "That would bankrupt you." "It would leverage me heavily, but it would also give me complete control of the company. No more board votes. No more Victor undermining every decision I make. Just me, running the business my father built the way it was supposed to be run." Lily looked between them. "And then what happens to the resort project?" "It ends. Or it gets restructured with a different location. Either way, your home stays yours." Vanessa met Ethan's eyes. "I should have done this 7 years ago. Fought for control instead of letting Victor manipulate me into thinking I needed him. Better late than never." "That's a massive risk," Ethan said quietly. "So is loving someone. Turns out I'm okay with risk when it matters." The words hung in the kitchen air. Lily made a strangled noise that might have been a suppressed squeal and suddenly became very interested in her cinnamon roll. "You don't have to do this," Ethan said. "Destroy your financial security just to— To what? Save your land? Save us?" Vanessa shook her head. "This isn't charity, Ethan. This is me finally taking control of my own life. Victor's been holding the company hostage for years, using it as leverage to control my decisions. I'm done being controlled." "What if the buyout doesn't work? What if he still refuses to sell?" "Then I'll find another way. But I have to try. I have to know I did everything possible to make this right." Ethan looked at Lily, who was watching them both with barely contained excitement. Looked at Vanessa, who'd flown back to Silverwood in the middle of a corporate crisis because she needed to see the river. Looked around the kitchen his grandfather built, held together by hope and stubbornness, and the kind of love that survived 7 years of silence. "Okay," he said, "but we do this together. You help me keep the land, I help you take down Victor. No more fighting separate battles." Vanessa's smile was real this time, not the corporate mask she usually wore. "Together." "Together," Lily echoed, raising her coffee mug in a toast. "Can I be there when you tell Victor you're buying him out? I want to see his face." "Absolutely not," both adults said in unison. They spent the rest of the morning going over strategy for Monday's hearing. Catherine had sent over a briefing document that was essentially a playbook for how Ethan should present himself in court. Dress conservatively, but not expensively. Answer questions directly without elaborating. Don't let Victor's lawyers bait you into losing your temper. "That last one's going to be hard," Ethan admitted. "I'll kick you under the table if you start to crack," Vanessa offered. "Is that allowed?" "Probably not. I'll do it anyway." By afternoon, Lily had retreated to her room to work on designs, leaving Ethan and Vanessa alone in the living room with case files spread across every surface. Rain drummed against the windows. The house settled around them, creaking in all its familiar places. "Can I ask you something?" Ethan said. "Anything." "That night you left, 7 years ago. Did you know I was going to ask you to marry me?" Vanessa went very still. "What?" "I bought a ring. Nothing fancy, just a simple band from the jeweler in town. I was going to ask you to stay, to marry me and build a life here." Ethan stared at his hands. "I had this whole speech planned about how we could make it work, how you could do your architecture and I could do construction, and we'd figure out the rest together. Then you got on that plane and I never got to say any of it." "I didn't know," Vanessa whispered. "I swear, Ethan, I didn't know." "Would it have changed anything if you did?" She was quiet for a long time. "I don't know. Maybe. Victor's threats were very specific. He said if I stayed, he'd make sure you never worked in construction again, that he'd blacklist you with every contractor in 3 states, that your reputation would be destroyed before you even knew what hit you. I was 23 and terrified, and I believed him. You should have told me. Let me make that choice. I know. I should have trusted you to fight your own battles. But I was scared of what would happen if you lost because of me. If everything you'd built came crashing down because I was too selfish to walk away. She looked at him with red-rimmed eyes. I convinced myself I was protecting you. Really, I was just protecting myself from having to watch you suffer. You ever think about how different things would be if you'd stayed? Every day for 7 years. Yeah, me too. They sat in silence, the weight of lost time pressing down on them. Outside, the rain fell harder, turning the river dark and turbulent. Ethan thought about the ring he'd bought and never gave, still sitting in a drawer in his bedroom. Thought about all the conversations they never had and the life they never built. For what it's worth, Vanessa said quietly, I would have said yes. To marrying me? To all of it. Staying, building a life here, choosing you over my career. I would have said yes in a heartbeat if I'd had the courage to let myself. Ethan's throat tightened. We can't go back and fix that. I know. But we can start from here. If you want. If you think we deserve a second chance. I don't know if deserve has anything to do with it. But I know I'm tired of being angry. Tired of carrying around what you did like some kind of trophy to prove I was right to never trust anyone again. So what do? We take it slow. We figure out who we are now instead of trying to be who we were before. And we see if there's actually something here worth saving or if we're just nostalgic for something that doesn't exist anymore. Vanessa nodded. I can work with slow. Good, because Lily's already planning our wedding and I need time to figure out how to tell her to slow down. That surprised a laugh out of Vanessa. She's planning our wedding? She's 12 and reads too many romance novels. Of course she's planning our wedding. They were still laughing when Lily appeared in the doorway, notebook in hand, looking entirely too pleased with herself. I'm not planning your wedding, she announced. I'm planning the reception. There's a difference. And it's going to be right here, by the river, because that's where all good love stories end. Lily, Ethan started, don't Lily me. You two have been dancing around each other for days. It's exhausting. Just admit you're in love and let me enjoy the happy ending. Life doesn't work like romance novels, kid. Maybe it should. Romance novels would never make you wait 7 years for a second chance. She flounced back to her room, leaving Ethan and Vanessa staring at each other. She's not wrong, Vanessa said. About the waiting or the happy ending? Both. Sunday passed in a blur of preparation and anxiety. Catherine called twice to review testimony strategy. The reporter from the news station called asking for a follow-up interview. Ethan's phone buzzed constantly with messages of support from people he'd never met, strangers who'd seen the story and wanted him to know they were rooting for him. Vanessa spent most of the day at the hotel, preparing her own documentation for what would come after the hearing. She'd already reached out to her financial advisors about the buyout proposal, started gathering the paperwork needed to make a formal offer. It was aggressive and probably reckless, but Ethan was starting to realize that was Vanessa's default when she finally stopped letting fear make her decisions. By Sunday night, Ethan couldn't sit still. He paced the house, checking and rechecking the folder of documents Catherine had told him to bring. Lily finally dragged him outside to the porch. You're making the floorboards nervous, she said. That doesn't make sense. Neither does wearing a path in the floor the night before the hearing. Sit down. Breathe. We're going to win. You don't know that. Yes, I do. You're Ethan Carter. You don't lose things that matter. Ethan looked at his daughter, this kid who'd been through the foster system and come out still believing in happy endings, and felt something settle in his chest. When did you get so wise? I've always been wise. You're just stressed enough to notice. They sat together watching the river run black under the night sky. Ethan's phone buzzed. A text from Vanessa. Can't sleep. Too nervous. Tell me it's going to be okay. He typed back. It's going to be okay. We're going to win. How do you know? Because Lily said so, and she's never wrong. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. I love you. I know it's too soon to say that. I know we're supposed to be taking it slow, but I'm going to walk into that courthouse tomorrow, and I need you to know that whatever happens, I love you. I never stopped." Ethan stared at the message. His hands shook slightly as he typed his response. "I love you too. Even when I hated you, I loved you. Tomorrow, we end this. Together." Monday morning came too fast and not fast enough. Ethan put on the suit he'd bought for his father's retirement party 5 years ago, the only formal clothing he owned. It was slightly too tight in the shoulders, and the pants were a little short, but Catherine had said conservative, not fashionable. Lily insisted on coming, even though Ethan had tried to convince her to go to school. "This is our home," she said simply. "I should be there when we fight for it." Vanessa met them at the courthouse, dressed in a sharp gray suit that probably cost more than Ethan's truck. She looked nervous and determined and beautiful, and Ethan had to remind himself they were there for a legal hearing, not a reunion. Catherine Brennan arrived 10 minutes before the hearing carrying a briefcase that looked like it weighed more than she did. She pulled Ethan aside for final instructions. "Victor's lawyers are going to argue that the development serves public interest and your refusal to sell is holding up economic progress. I'm going to counter with property rights and the fact that forced sale requires genuine public need, not corporate profit. Stay calm. Answer only what's asked. Don't elaborate." "Got it." "And Ethan, you're going to do great. Just tell the truth." They filed into the courtroom, a wood-paneled space that smelled like old books and floor polish. Judge Morrison, no relation to the deputy, was maybe 60, graybeard, eyes that missed nothing. Victor Langford sat at the opposing table with 3 lawyers who looked like they billed in $1,000 increments. He smiled at Ethan across the courtroom. It was not a friendly smile. The hearing started with Victor's lead attorney, a man named Patterson, who had silver hair and a voice like he was narrating a documentary about the decline of civilization. He painted a picture of economic devastation and opportunity lost, of a single landowner standing in the way of 300 jobs and millions in tax revenue. "Your Honor, Mr. Carter's refusal to negotiate is not about preserving family legacy. It's about extracting maximum value from a development that would benefit the entire community. He's holding Silverwood River hostage for personal gain." Catherine stood, her voice sharp as broken glass. "Your Honor, Mr. Carter isn't holding anything hostage. He's exercising his fundamental right to refuse an unwanted sale of private property. The development's economic projections are speculative at best. The public benefit argument is a fiction designed to justify corporate overreach." Back and forth they went, trading arguments like punches. Ethan listened to his life being dissected by strangers, reduced to property values and economic impact studies. Lily sat beside him, hands folded in her lap, watching everything with those 2 smart eyes. Finally, Judge Morrison called Ethan to the stand. "Mr. Carter, tell me in your own words why you won't sell the property." Ethan took a breath, looked at Catherine, who nodded, looked at Vanessa, who mouthed, "You got this," looked at Lily, who gave him a thumbs up. "Because it's my home," he said simply. "My grandfather built that house with his own hands. My father was born there. I was born there. I'm raising my daughter there. It's where she feels safe, where she learned to draw buildings and dream about becoming an architect. You can't put a price on that. I don't care if it's 3 million or 4 million or 10 million. Some things aren't for sale." "The development would create jobs," Judge Morrison pointed out, "benefit the local economy. Maybe. Or maybe it would turn Silverwood into another tourist town where locals can't afford to live anymore, where everything gets bulldozed for luxury condos and the actual community gets pushed out." Ethan leaned forward. "I've lived here my whole life. I've watched this town struggle, but at least it's still ours. The second we start selling off pieces of it to the highest bidder, it stops being home and starts being real estate." Patterson stood. "Your Honor, Mr. Carter is being dramatic. No one's bulldozing the entire town. We're talking about 20 acres of riverside property that could generate significant economic activity." "We're talking about my life," Ethan shot back. "My daughter's life, and you're trying to take it because your client decided it's worth more to him than it is to us." "Mr. Carter," Judge Morrison said quietly, "I'm going to ask you a direct question. If the court rules in favor of Whitmore-Langford development, what will you do?" Ethan thought about that. About packing up Lily's drawings and his grandfather's tools and walking away from the only home he'd ever known. About watching strangers tear down walls that held 3 generations of memories. "I'll appeal," he said. "And if I lose the appeal, I'll appeal again. I'll fight this until I've exhausted every legal option. And if I still lose," he looked at Lily, "we'll figure it out, but we won't make it easy for them." Judge Morrison made a note. "Thank you, Mr. Carter. You can step down." Catherine called 2 more witnesses, a local historian who testified about the property's cultural significance, and an environmental consultant who'd reviewed the development's impact studies and found them severely flawed. Victor's lawyers countered with an economist who made the resort sound like the salvation of the entire region. Finally, Judge Morrison called a recess to review the arguments. They had 30 minutes to wait while he made his decision. Ethan spent them pacing the courthouse hallway, watching the clock tick down like it was counting off the last minutes of his life. Vanessa appeared at his elbow. "You did good in there." "I got emotional." "You got honest. There's a difference." "What happens if we lose?" "We appeal, like you said. We fight until there's nothing left to fight with." Ethan looked at her. "And the buyout offer?" "Already drafted. The second this hearing ends, regardless of the outcome, I'm sending it to Victor with a 48-hour deadline. He can accept it and walk away with a fortune, or he can keep fighting and watch me tear the company apart around him." "That's aggressive." "I learned from the best." She nodded toward Catherine, who was conferring with an assistant near the courtroom doors. "You're not the only one who knows how to fight for things that matter." The bailiff called them back in. Ethan's heart hammered in his chest as they filed into the courtroom and took their seats. Judge Morrison looked at the assembled lawyers, then at Ethan, then at the stack of documents in front of him. "This is a difficult case," he said. "Both sides have made compelling arguments. The economic benefits of the proposed development are significant. The job creation potential is real. However," Ethan held his breath. "However, the foundation of this country is built on property rights, on the idea that citizens cannot be forced to surrender their private land without genuine public necessity. And I'm not convinced that a luxury resort, however beneficial to the local economy, constitutes genuine public necessity." Judge Morrison looked at Victor's lawyers. "The Development Corporation has not demonstrated sufficient grounds for eminent domain. Mr. Carter's refusal to sell is well within his legal rights. The motion for expedited acquisition is denied." The courtroom erupted. Catherine grabbed Ethan's arm, grinning. Lily launched herself at him with a squeal that probably violated courtroom decorum. Vanessa stood frozen for a moment, then covered her face with her hands, shoulders shaking. Victor Langford's expression was pure fury. He stood, leaning across to whisper something to Patterson, then walked out of the courtroom without looking back. Judge Morrison banged his gavel. "Order! I'm not finished." The room quieted. "I'm also issuing a restraining order prohibiting any representative of Whitmore Langford Development from approaching Mr. Carter's daughter or property without explicit permission. The incident at the school demonstrated a pattern of harassment that will not be tolerated." He signed the order with a flourish. "We're adjourned." Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed them with questions and cameras. Catherine handled most of it, giving professional sound bites about property rights and the importance of standing up to corporate overreach. Ethan stood to the side with Lily, both of them slightly shell-shocked by the reality of winning. Vanessa was on her phone, typing furiously. After a moment, she lowered it and looked at Ethan. "I just sent the buyout offer to Victor, 48 hours to respond." "What do you think he'll do?" "I think he'll be furious, but I also think he's smart enough to know when he's beaten. The court ruling weakens his position in the company. The board won't support another legal fight after this. His best option is to take the money and leave." "And if he doesn't?" Vanessa's smile was sharp. "Then we make his life miserable until he does." They drove back to the house, Lily chattering in the back seat about how cool it was when the judge denied the motion and how she couldn't wait to tell everyone at school. Ethan let her talk, too overwhelmed to contribute much. Vanessa followed in her Mercedes, and when they all ended up in the kitchen again, it felt like coming home. "We should celebrate," Lily announced. "Order pizza or something." "Pizza sounds good," Ethan agreed. While they waited for delivery, Vanessa's phone rang. She looked at the screen and her expression shifted. It's Victor, she said. Answer it, Ethan told her. Put it on speaker. She did. Victor's voice filled the kitchen, tight with barely controlled anger. You had no right to make that offer without board approval. I had every right. It's my company, Victor. My name on the building. My decision, who I work with. The board will never approve the financing for a buyout of this size. I'm not asking for board approval. I'm using personal assets and independent financing. This is between you and me. Silence on the other end. Then, you'd bankrupt yourself just to get rid of me? Without hesitation. You've been holding this company hostage for years, using it to control my life. I'm done. Take the offer or don't. Either way, you're leaving. More silence. Ethan could practically hear Victor's teeth grinding through the phone. I want 20% more than your offer, Victor said finally. Not happening. Then I'll fight this. I'll make it as painful and expensive as possible. Go ahead. I've got nothing but time and motivation, and after today's court ruling, the board knows you picked a fight we couldn't win. Your credibility is shot. You want to stay and watch your reputation crumble further? Be my guest. Or you can take a generous buyout and walk away with your pride intact. Another long pause. I need time to review the terms. You have 48 hours, not a minute more. This isn't over, Vanessa. Yes, it is. You just don't know it yet. She hung up. The kitchen was silent for a moment. Then Lily started clapping, slow and deliberate, and Ethan found himself joining in. That, Lily said, was the coolest thing I've ever heard. Vanessa laughed, but it sounded shaky. She sat down hard in one of the kitchen chairs. I think I'm going to throw up. Don't, Ethan said. Pizza's on the way. I just threatened my business partner with financial warfare. You stood up to a bully. There's a difference. She looked up at him, and Ethan saw the same fear and hope he felt mirrored in her eyes. They'd won the hearing, sent the buyout offer, drawn every line that needed drawing. Now they just had to wait and see if Victor would accept reality or go down fighting. The pizza arrived. They ate in the kitchen, grease and celebration and relief making everything taste better than it should. Lily monopolized the conversation, planning how she'd tell the story at school, already embellishing details to make it sound more dramatic. Finally, she excused herself to text her friends, leaving Ethan and Vanessa alone with the remains of dinner and 48 hours of uncertainty ahead of them. Thank you, Ethan said, for the lawyer, for standing up to Victor, for all of it. You don't have to thank me. This is me fixing what I broke. This is you being brave enough to fight for what you want. That's different than fixing mistakes. Vanessa reached across the table and took his hand. What do we do now? We wait, and we figure out what the next chapter looks like. For us? For all of us. You, me, Lily, this house. Everything. They sat there in the kitchen his grandfather built, holding hands across a table that wobbled, surrounded by evidence of a life held together by stubbornness and hope. Outside, the river ran steady and eternal, indifferent to human drama, but bearing witness anyway. Ethan thought about promises and second chances, and all the ways love could break you and put you back together stronger than before. Thought about the ring still sitting in his drawer, and whether now was the time or if they needed more days like this first, building trust out of honesty and shared battles. His phone buzzed, a text from Catherine. Congratulations, you earned this. Call me tomorrow and we'll discuss next steps for the restraining order. Another text, this one from his father. Proud of you, son. Grandpa would be too. And one more, from a number Ethan didn't recognize. This isn't over. Chet, VL. He showed the last one to Vanessa. She read it and smiled. Let him threaten. He's already lost. He just doesn't know it yet. You sure about that? I'm sure about us. The rest is just details. Ethan squeezed her hand, and for the first time in 7 years, he let himself believe they might actually make it. The 48 hours stretched like wire pulled too tight. Ethan went back to work Tuesday morning because sitting around the house waiting for Victor's response felt like slow torture. He spent the day framing out a sunroom addition for a couple who kept changing their minds about window placement, and the mindless physical work was exactly what he needed to keep from checking his phone every 30 seconds. Vanessa texted around noon. No word yet. Catherine says that's normal. Lawyers like to run out the clock to look like they're negotiating from strength. Or he's actually considering it, Ethan typed back. Either way, the deadline is Wednesday at 5. After that, the offer expires and we move to Plan B. What's Plan B? I'm still working on that part. Ethan smiled despite the anxiety thrumming through his chest. He was learning that Vanessa operated best when she had something to fight against, that years of corporate maneuvering had taught her to think 3 moves ahead even when she didn't know what the first move would accomplish. It was both impressive and slightly terrifying. That evening, she showed up at the house again with coffee and a stack of documents that had nothing to do with Victor or buyouts or legal battles. What's this? Ethan asked. Lily's architecture applications. MIT, Cornell, University of Virginia, all the schools with top-rated programs. Vanessa spread them across the kitchen table. She's 12 now. That gives us 6 years to build a portfolio that will make admissions offices fight over her. She's 12, Ethan repeated. Can we maybe let her be 12 before we start planning her college applications? Being 12 doesn't mean we can't think ahead. These programs are competitive. She needs early exposure to professional architects, real project experience, a portfolio that shows growth and vision. You sound like a guidance counselor on steroids. I sound like someone who knows how the system works and wants to make sure she doesn't get overlooked because she's from a small town nobody's heard of. Vanessa looked at him. You want her to have opportunities. So do I. This is how we make that happen. Lily appeared from the hallway, clearly having been listening. Are you two planning my future without me again? Yes, Vanessa said unapologetically. Sit down. We need to talk about summer programs. They spent the next 2 hours going through options, Vanessa explaining which programs would carry weight on applications and which were essentially expensive summer camps. Lily asked questions, took notes, and periodically looked at Ethan like she couldn't quite believe this was actually happening. Why are you doing this? She asked Vanessa finally. You barely know me. Vanessa set down the pamphlet she'd been reviewing. Because you remind me of myself at your age. Brilliant and ambitious and stuck in a place that doesn't have resources to match your potential. And because I spent 7 years away from here wishing I'd had someone believe in me the way I believe in you. Ms. Whitmore, call me Vanessa. We're past formalities. Vanessa, Lily tried out the name. If you and my dad get married, does that mean you'll be my stepmom? Both adults froze. Ethan's coffee cup stopped halfway to his mouth. Vanessa looked like she'd been hit with a 2x4. Lily, Ethan managed, we're not. You're clearly in love with each other, Lily said reasonably. You hold hands when you think I'm not looking. You stare at each other like people in movies. And you're planning my college education together, which seems like a pretty stepmom thing to do. Vanessa found her voice first. Your dad and I are taking things slow. You've known each other for like 15 years. How much slower can you go? She has a point, Ethan admitted. Not helping, Vanessa muttered. She looked at Lily. The honest answer is, I don't know. Your dad and I have a complicated history. We're trying to figure out who we are now instead of who we were before. And part of that means not rushing into decisions just because they feel right in the moment. But you want to marry him. Vanessa stopped, took a breath. Yes, someday, if he'll have me. If we can build something real instead of just trying to recapture what we lost. Lily looked at Ethan. And you want to marry her? This is not a conversation I expected to have tonight, Ethan said. That's not a no. No, it's not a no. He met Vanessa's eyes across the table. But your stepmom-to-be is right. We need to take this slow. Make sure we're building something that lasts instead of just reacting to 7 years of missing each other. Fine, Lily said, like she was granting them permission. But for the record, I'd be okay with it. The stepmom thing, in case you were worried about that. Noted, Ethan said. Now go to bed. It's 8:30. Then go read in bed and give us a minute to recover from this conversation. Lily gathered up the college pamphlets and disappeared down the hallway, leaving Ethan and Vanessa staring at each other across the kitchen table. Well, Vanessa said finally, that was subtle. She's been reading romance novels. Subtlety is not her strong suit right now. She asked if I was going to be her stepmom. I heard. And you didn't deny it. Would you have wanted me to? Vanessa looked down at her hands. No, but I also don't want to rush this. I don't want to make the same mistakes I made before, jumping into something without thinking it through, without making sure it's built on something solid. So we take it slow, Ethan said. Like we agreed. But Lily's right about one thing. We are clearly in love with each other. Pretending otherwise is just wasting time we've already lost. When did you become the romantic one? I've always been the romantic one. You just weren't here to notice. Vanessa reached across the table and took his hand. I'm here now. Yeah, you are. They sat there in the kitchen while evening settled over the river, and somewhere down the hall, Lily was definitely not reading and was probably texting her friends about wedding plans. Ethan thought about the ring in his drawer and whether now was the time or if they needed more nights like this first, building towards something instead of trying to recapture what was already gone. His phone buzzed. Catherine's number. It's my lawyer, he said. Answer it. He did. Catherine's voice was crisp and professional. Victor's legal team just filed a response to the buyout offer. He's accepting the terms with one modification. He wants the transaction completed within 90 days instead of the proposed 6 months. Ethan looked at Vanessa. He's accepting. Her eyes went wide. What's the catch? 90-day completion instead of 6 months, Ethan told her. Vanessa grabbed her own phone, pulling up what looked like financial spreadsheets. Her fingers flew across the screen, calculating something. After a moment, she looked up. I can make 90 days work. It'll be tight, but the bridge loan I secured can be converted to permanent financing within that time frame. She spoke into Ethan's phone. Catherine, tell his lawyers we accept the modification. Draw up the final contracts. You're sure? Catherine asked. 90 days doesn't leave much room for error. I'm sure. Get it done. After Catherine hung up, Vanessa set down her phone and just stared at it like she couldn't quite believe what had just happened. He's leaving, she said quietly. Victor's actually leaving. You did it. We did it. You fought for the land. I fought for the company. We both won. Ethan pulled her up from her chair and into his arms. She came willingly, burying her face against his shoulder, and he felt her shake with something that might have been laughter, or tears, or both. I can't believe it's over, she whispered. It's not over. It's just beginning. They stood there in the kitchen holding each other while the old house creaked around them and the river kept running, and somewhere in Boston, Victor Langford was probably throwing things and cursing their names. Ethan didn't care. For the first time in 7 years, the future looked like something worth fighting for instead of just surviving. The next 3 months were chaos. Vanessa spent half her time in Boston finalizing the buyout paperwork and the other half in Silverwood working remotely from the Riverbend Inn. Ethan finished the sunroom project and took on 2 more jobs that actually paid on time. Lily applied for a summer architecture program in Boston that Vanessa had connections to, and when she got accepted, she screamed loud enough that Ethan's father called from the nursing home asking if everything was okay. The buyout closed on a Wednesday in June, 90 days exactly from when Victor had accepted the modified terms. Vanessa called Ethan from Boston at 4 in the afternoon, her voice shaking. It's done. The paperwork's filed. Victor's shares are transferred. I own the company outright. How do you feel? Terrified. Relieved. Like I just jumped off a cliff and I'm not sure if I'm flying or falling. You're flying, Ethan said. You've been flying this whole time. You just didn't know it. I couldn't have done this without you. Yeah, you could have, but I'm glad you didn't have to. She was quiet for a moment. I'm coming back to Silverwood tonight. I don't want to be in Boston anymore. I want to be there. We'll be here. She arrived around midnight, exhausted and wired and carrying a bottle of champagne she'd bought at the airport. Lily was already asleep, so they sat on the porch in the dark, passing the bottle back and forth like teenagers, talking about everything and nothing. What happens now? Ethan asked. With the company. With you. I restructure. Cut the projects that were only viable with Victor's political connections. Focus on sustainable development that actually serves communities instead of just extracting profit from them. Vanessa took a long drink. And I moved the headquarters here, to Silverwood. Ethan stared at her. Here? Why not? I can run the business from anywhere. Boston was only necessary because that's where Victor wanted to be. Now he's gone and I get to decide where I work. And I want to be here, near the river, near you, near the life I should have chosen 7 years ago. That's a big decision. I've made bigger ones, like buying out my business partner for an amount of money that would make most people faint. Moving to Silverwood is easy compared to that. What about your apartment in Boston, your connections there? I'll keep the apartment for when I need to be in the city. The connections will follow me or they won't. Either way, I'm done making decisions based on what other people think I should do. She looked at him in the darkness. Unless you don't want me here, in which case I'll respect that and we'll figure out some kind of long-distance arrangement. I want you here, Ethan said. I've wanted you here since the day you left. Good, because I already put an offer on the old Miller property down the road. 3 acres, river access, enough space to build an office and a house. You bought property? I made an offer. There's a difference. But yeah, assuming it goes through, I'll own land in Silverwood within 60 days. Ethan laughed, the sound carrying across the dark water. You don't do anything halfway, do you? Not anymore. I wasted 7 years doing things halfway, being half invested in my career because I felt guilty about how I got there, being half present in relationships because I was still in love with someone else. I'm done with halfway. She set down the champagne bottle and turned to face him fully. The porch light caught her eyes, turning them gold. Ethan Carter, I am completely, terrifyingly all in on this. On you, on Lily, on building a life here. And if that's too much too fast, tell me now so I can slow down before I scare you off. You're not scaring me off? You sure? Because I'm about to get more intense. How much more intense can you... Vanessa kissed him. Not carefully, not tentatively, but with 7 years of missed chances and second-chance desperation behind it. Ethan kissed her back, his hands in her hair, tasting champagne and hope, and everything they'd lost and found again. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Vanessa rested her forehead against his. I love you, she said. I know I already told you that, but I need you to hear it again. I love you, and I'm staying, and I'm going to spend every day proving that I'm not going to run again. I love you too, Ethan said. And I forgive you. For leaving. For all of it. I don't want to carry that anger anymore. I just want to move forward. Together? Together. They stayed on the porch until the champagne was gone, and the night started to turn gray at the edges. Finally, Vanessa stood, swaying slightly. I should go back to the hotel before I fall asleep in your chair and give the neighbors more to talk about. Or you could stay. She looked at him. Yeah? Guest room, nothing dramatic, but it's late and you're exhausted and the hotel's 20 minutes away. Stay. So she did. Ethan gave her an old t-shirt to sleep in and showed her to the guest room that hadn't been used in years. When he passed by her door an hour later, unable to sleep, he saw light under the door frame and heard her on the phone with what sounded like a contractor, planning renovations to the Miller property at 1 a.m. Some things never changed. Summer arrived properly, the kind of heat that made the river look inviting and the old house feel like an oven. Lily left for her architecture program in Boston, nervous and excited and making Ethan promise to call every day. Vanessa officially moved her company headquarters to Silverwood, setting up a temporary office in the back room of what used to be the hardware store on Main Street until her new building was finished. The town watched their relationship unfold with the kind of interest small towns specialized in. People who remembered Vanessa from before she was a billionaire welcomed her back cautiously. People who only knew her from the news coverage of the resort battle were more skeptical. Ethan ignored all of it, too busy helping Vanessa interview contractors and pick out office furniture to care what anyone thought. His father came home from the nursing home in July, his speech better after months of therapy, his pride in Ethan's fight against the development corporation written all over his face. They had dinner at the River House, the 3 of them, Ethan, his father, and Vanessa, and it felt like family in a way that made Ethan's chest tight. Your grandfather would have liked her, his father said after Vanessa left. Stubborn, knows her own mind, doesn't take any garbage. Yeah, he would have. You gonna marry her? Probably. Good. Don't wait too long. Life's too short for waiting. Ethan thought about the ring in his drawer, still there after all these years. Thought about perfect moments and grand gestures and whether any of that mattered as much as just choosing someone every day and meaning it. He asked her on a Tuesday in August. No fanfare, no elaborate plan. They were sitting on the dock after work, feet dangling in the water, watching the sun set over the river. Vanessa was talking about the new office design and whether she should put windows on the north wall or save money with solid construction. "Marry me," Ethan said, interrupting her mid-sentence about energy efficiency. Vanessa stopped talking, turned to look at him. "What?" "Marry me. Not someday. Not when everything's perfect. Now or soon. Whenever you want. Just marry me." "That's the worst proposal I've ever heard. It's the only proposal you're getting from me. I'm not good at romantic speeches, but I love you, and I want to spend my life with you, and I don't want to wait anymore for the right moment because this is the right moment. Every moment with you is the right moment." Vanessa's eyes filled with tears. "You're terrible at this." "I know. Is that a yes?" "Of course it's a yes, you impossible man." Ethan pulled the ring from his pocket, the same simple band he'd bought 7 years ago and never given. It still fit her finger perfectly. "You kept it," Vanessa whispered, staring at the ring. "I kept everything, the ring, the hope, the belief that maybe someday we'd get another chance." "I don't deserve you." "Yeah, you do. You fought for this, for us, for the chance to come back and make things right. That deserves everything." They sat on the dock until full dark, planning nothing and everything, talking about whether to have a wedding or just go to the courthouse, whether Lily would be furious or thrilled, whether they should wait until the new house was built or just start their life together in the old one. In the end, they decided on simple. A small ceremony by the river in September, just family and close friends, Lily as the maid of honor wearing a dress she designed herself. No grand resort, no luxury hotel, just the dock where they'd made their first promise and the house where they'd found their way back to each other. The wedding happened on a Saturday morning when the air was cool and the river ran clear. Lily cried through the entire ceremony, which she later claimed was allergies, but everyone knew was emotion. Ethan's father gave a toast about stubbornness and second chances that made half the guests reach for tissues. Vanessa's mother flew in from Seattle, meeting Ethan for the first time and immediately announcing that she'd known all along her daughter would find her way back to him. They danced on the lawn to music from a local band, ate barbecue catered by the place in town that had been there since before Ethan was born, and watched the sun set over the water while Lily gave an impromptu speech about love and architecture and building things that last. "Marriage is like designing a house," she said, reading from notes she'd clearly prepared. "You need a strong foundation, good bones, and the flexibility to add rooms as you grow. You need someone who will help you fix what breaks and won't abandon the project when things get hard. And you need to build it somewhere that feels like home." She looked at Ethan and Vanessa. "You two built your foundation here. Broke it. Came back and rebuilt it stronger. And now you're adding rooms and planning the future and proving that some promises don't break. They just wait for the right time to be kept." Ethan pulled his daughter into a hug while guests applauded. Vanessa joined them, and they stood there together, the three of them, while the river ran and the old house stood witness, and the future spread out before them like a blueprint waiting to be filled in. That night, after the guests had gone and Lily had fallen asleep exhausted from celebration, Ethan and Vanessa sat on the porch in the dark. Married now, committed in a way that felt both terrifying and absolutely right. "What are you thinking?" Vanessa asked. "That we almost didn't get here. That if you hadn't come back, if I'd sold the land, if any of 1,000 things had gone differently, we'd be living completely different lives right now." "Do you wish things had gone differently?" "No, I wish we hadn't wasted 7 years, but I don't wish the journey had been easier. Everything we went through, the separation, the fighting, the fear of losing everything, it made us strong enough to build something that'll last." Vanessa leaned her head on his shoulder. Lily was right about building things that last. That's what we're doing here. Not just a marriage, a whole life, a family. "Speaking of family," Ethan said, "how do you feel about the possibility of expanding it? Eventually, no rush. You want more kids?" "I want whatever life we build together. If that includes more kids, great. If it's just us and Lily and the river, that's great too. I just want to make sure we're on the same page about the future." I'm on whatever page you're on, Vanessa said. That's what marriage means, right? Choosing the same story. They sat in comfortable silence, the kind that only comes from knowing someone long enough to not need words for everything. The river kept running, the house kept standing, and somewhere in the dark, the future was taking shape. Messy and imperfect and absolutely worth fighting for. 3 years later, Ethan stood in the same spot on the porch, watching his daughter pack for NYT. She was 15 now, early admission, scholarship and all, Vanessa's mentorship and her own brilliant mind combining to create opportunities that shouldn't have been possible for a kid from Silverwood. You sure you have everything? He called through the screen door. Dad, I've checked 17 times. I'm good. Vanessa appeared from the kitchen carrying a box of supplies. Lily, take this. Extra blankets. It gets cold in Boston. It's September. It'll be cold by November, trust me. They loaded Lily's things into Vanessa's car. She'd bought a sensible sedan instead of the Mercedes, claiming the new one had better gas mileage, but really just wanting something that didn't scream billionaire CEO. The old house had been renovated slowly over the past 3 years, fixed up properly with money they actually had now that Vanessa's company was thriving and Ethan's construction business had expanded to include sustainable building projects across 3 counties. The new house on the Miller property stood finished a quarter-mile down the road, all glass and light and innovative design, but they'd kept the old one too. Used it as an office sometimes, a guest house other times. A reminder that some things were worth preserving even when you had the means to build something newer. They drove Lily to Boston together, the 3 of them, plus Ethan's father, who insisted on coming despite the long drive being hard on him. They moved her into the dorm, met her roommate, attended the orientation session for parents that made Ethan feel old and proud and terrified all at once. When it was time to leave, Lily hugged Vanessa first. Thank you, she said, for everything, the mentorship, the connections, believing in me when I was just some kid with a notebook full of impossible houses. You were never just some kid, Vanessa replied. You were always brilliant. I just helped people notice. Then Lily turned to Ethan, and he saw his little girl trying hard not to cry. You okay, kid? Yeah, just take care of each other. And Dad? Yeah? The empty chair on the porch. You can stop saving it now. She's not going anywhere. Ethan laughed through the tightness in his chest. I know, but old habits die hard. They drove back to Silverwood in near silence. Ethan and Vanessa processing the reality of Lily being gone, the house being quieter, this new chapter of their lives beginning. His father dozed in the back seat, worn out from the day. That evening, they sat on the porch of the old house, the one they'd fought so hard to keep. Vanessa had brought wine. Ethan had brought exhaustion and pride in equal measure. She's going to do amazing things, Vanessa said. I know. Doesn't make it easier to let her go. Nothing about parenting is easy, but we did good. She's smart and kind and knows her worth. That's all we can ask for. Ethan looked at his wife, 3 years of marriage and a lifetime of history between them. You ever think about what would have happened if you hadn't come back? If the resort project had never happened? All the time. And it terrifies me, because I was prepared to spend the rest of my life in Boston, successful and miserable, convinced I'd made the right choice. Coming back, fighting for this place, for you, it saved me. We saved each other. Yeah, we did. They sat in silence, watching the river run dark under the evening sky. The water that had witnessed their first promise, their separation, their reunion, and now their future unfolding in ways they never could have planned. You know what I learned from all this? Ethan said finally. From losing you and getting you back and fighting to keep this place? What? That some promises aren't meant to be kept perfectly. They're meant to be broken and rebuilt and broken again until you figure out what they really mean. We promised this place would always be here for us, and it is. But not because we protected it from change, because we fought for it when it mattered and learned to build something new without destroying what came before. Vanessa reached for his hand. That's very philosophical for a guy who builds houses for a living. I have depths. You just married me before you discovered them all. Lucky me. They stayed on the porch until the stars came out, Two people who'd taken the long way around to find each other again, sitting in a house that had survived 3 generations and one corporate buyout attempt, watching the river that had seen them through everything. Ethan thought about 7 years of silence and 3 years of rebuilding. Thought about Lily off at MIT, living the dream they'd helped her build. Thought about his father asleep in the guest room, proud of the son who'd stood his ground. Thought about Vanessa beside him, no longer running from the life she wanted, finally brave enough to choose it. Some stories don't have neat endings. Some promises take decades to keep. Some loves have to be lost before they can be found again. But sitting there on the porch his grandfather built, holding the hand of the woman who'd come back after 7 years and fought beside him for everything that mattered, Ethan understood something fundamental about life and love and the things worth fighting for. You don't get to choose what breaks, but you get to choose what you rebuild. And sometimes, if you're lucky and stubborn and willing to fight for it, what you rebuild is stronger than what you started with. The river kept running. The old house kept standing. And in the quiet warmth of a September evening, the single father and the billionaire woman who'd found their way back to each other finally had the life they were always meant to build. Not perfect, not easy, but absolutely, completely worth every moment it took to get there.